Do you accept, if we move our attention now to the latter part of the Prime Minister's overseas commitments, of an area of your responsibility in climate and the COP26, do you accept that overall our commitment hasn't been the key problem here? The core risk to the success of COP26 are three nations in particular: India, China and Russia.
Well, fundamentally, I do accept that, of course, they're the main players in the room. Absolutely. Would be, of course, that's a statement of fact. But also, we haven't helped by our very lackadaisical 5 minutes to midnight net zero commitment. I mean, we are one of the world's biggest emitters per capita, with the 14th biggest emitter in absolute terms. So we have a role to play. Are we the key player? Of course not. Should China and India and Russia be stepping up more? Absolutely. We welcome the commitments they've made, particularly India most recently. But of course, China and Russia in particular, but also China, we would welcome them doing more. But we are in a very weak position to argue for that as a country because our own domestic track record is so poor. If we are to be taken seriously at the international table, it would be better if our domestic house was in better order. Penny Wong and I made it clear that climate diplomacy will be, first item of business in the foreign policy of a Labor government. But we've got to get our domestic house in order if we're going to have the credibility to argue for other countries to be better, as they should.
So given that, you've got to then have a significant 2030 target, don't you? And not just a modest increase. Particularly, I guess I ask you that in the context of the BCA, the New South Wales Coalition Government, the Farmers Federation. I mean, there is cover this time for Labor, is there not, to have a healthy, ambitious 2030 target?
Well, I've called for the government to improve their 2030 target at COP. They failed to do that. I've also outlined that Labor will be having an ambitious roadmap to 2050, net zero by 2050, including medium-term targets. We've said we won't announce those during COP. COP is the government's key moment, the government's key chance. The election is the point where the Labor Party can have the biggest input to the change of policy for the country. We've made it very clear that we'll be building on the policies we've already announced, the substantial policy announcements we've already made: community batteries, electric car, tax cut, rewiring the nation to get the grid up to scratch, to take much more renewables, 10,000 new energy apprentices. But that is the start. We have more to say and do, and we will say and do more, including an ambitious roadmap to net zero by 2050. The government has failed.
Okay, so what's the time frame for that? Are we talking the next couple of weeks, or when will we get that midterm target?
Not today on your show, Kieran. It's my melancholy duty to tell you. We've made it clear that we regard COP as the government's time in the period after COP. Of course,
sure.
We will be active, resuming the policy announcements that we previously already made and building on those, including our roadmap to net zero.
And just finally, do you believe the politics of this? I mean, no election is the same. No two elections are the same, I should say. Has this evolved in the last couple of years since 2019 in a political sense? Have you got stronger ground?
Look, I think it has, Kieran. I mean, to be clear, our policy will be determined by the science and the evidence of what's achievable and what needs to be achieved. But the political environment has changed. As you said, the BCA just 2 years ago called our then target economy wrecking. Now they've called for a target which is higher than that. We welcome them to the party. We have a choice of being annoyed that they've come late to the party or welcoming them to the party. I choose to focus on welcoming them to the party. And you're right, New South Wales Liberal government has moved substantially as well with their 50% 2030 target. But look, we'll have plenty to say, but it'll be based on the science and the evidence. And importantly, Kieran, most importantly, it'll be based on the economic evidence that action on climate change is in Australia's national economic best interest, the best interest of the regions, and delaying action just makes it harder and more expensive for the country.